All right. Hello, everyone. How you all doing? Good. You having a great time? Good, good, good. I am really privileged to have the Rust Foundation here with me today. We're going to have a special AMA session with them. We are going to focus on allowing you folks to ask them questions about the foundation, what it does, and we're going to really get into the future of Rust governance and how they're trying to make the language sustainable. The Rust Foundation has been a very important part in just a year and has done so much, and it's been great to see what you folks have been trying to do. So I will first allow each of you folks to introduce yourselves really quickly, and then we'll get into our first questions, starting right at the end.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm the Director of Finance, Fundraising, Grant Making, and just general things.
Hi everyone again, I'm back. I'm the Executive Director and CEO.
Hi everybody, I'm Joel Marcy, Director of Technology at the Rust Foundation.
And my name's Stephen Chen. I run the developer relations team at JFrog. And I think, am I the newest member of the Rust Foundation?
I think you are, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I win points on being the newbie, both on the panel and also on the Rust Foundation. But I think also it's good to bring kind of an outsider perspective on the Rust Foundation, because we've been longtime Rust contributors working on a big security project. We came in with a focus to help to secure the Rust ecosystem, and I think that both the Rust community and also the Rust Foundation have been very welcoming. So,
Yeah, that's great. That's really great to hear. I think we'll start with some milestones from the year. I've got the annual report in front of me here, and it would be great to ask you folks to share some of the big milestones from the year of the Rust Foundation being in existence fully, and what sort of things have been achieved for the ecosystem through the foundation. So I think we'll start with the money, as you do, and it would be great to hear from you, Paul.
Sure. So, I mean, this sounds like a silly thing to say. We're still here. We haven't gone bust. That's a great thing in any not-for-profit. Making sure you're getting enough money in, which we have. We brought in, if you include grants to be spent this year, getting on for $2.8 million last year, and that's hugely important. It comes from our members who pay membership fees, great organizations like Stevens, and also for grants for specific programs like the money we have from the Alpha Omega project. What that means in practical terms is that we've been able to build and grow our staff team. There were just 3 of us a year ago. Very soon we'll be a team of 10. And Joel, I'm sure we'll be speaking more about the people in the technical team who are doing direct work to support the project. We've been able to award over $600,000 worth of grants to support the volunteers, the contributors, the people who are most important to the Rust project overall. And also we've been able to do things like pay for the on-call service, support the infrastructure directly, both through financial costs and also acting as a channel for donated hosting services. So, sorry, that wasn't very succinct, but yeah, I would say main points. We've been able to make a lot of grants, which we think are really, really important. We've been able to hire people that the project have said will be useful, and we've been able to sustain the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's really important. We're going to get a lot more into the grants program in a minute. So I think that's all really positive stuff, and it's shown in the growth of the language as a whole. It'd be great to hear from Beck.
Okay, well, I will leave the technical and other stuff for Joel to touch on. But I think for me, you asked for milestones. Yeah, having an annual report, that's actually, I mean, it seems like such a small thing, but last year it was our first full calendar year of operation, and yeah, at the end of it, we'd actually, we'd done a lot of stuff. We actually had things to show people and say, like, this is the worth, this is what we're contributing, and yeah, it's this great baseline now for us to kind of build on and go forward. I'm really, really excited. There are so many things that we want to do as a foundation. There are so many good potential support programs that I think we can develop. And yeah, the milestone of just having this first year behind us, we're a functional organization. I started on, about nearly 18 months ago, January the 1st, 2022, it was just me on my own with my laptop and a very supportive board, but like, that was it. Trying to figure out, okay, where do we need to prioritize? Where do we need to kind of get staff in? What do those staff need to know in order to be able to provide the good support services? So yeah, like just, creating this amazing staff team, being able to bring on new amazing partners like JFrog onto the board, which, broaden our expertise and broaden our resources. I think, yeah, we're just getting started, and yeah, I'm really excited to where we go from here.
Great. Yes, Joe.
Like me?
Yeah.
So I think I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary at the foundation, and at the time I was the only technical member of the team, like a part of the technical team. I was just one person. Since then, we've done a few things. One big initiative that we've done, we provide cloud compute services for developers of the Rust project to access so that they can have better experience in actually developing the project. At specific request of the project, particularly the infrastructure team, which was an all-volunteer team, did awesome work, but they, wanted more resources and help. We were able to hire a full-time infrastructure engineer to help manage the Rust project infrastructure. He's been doing amazing work. And I think Paul mentioned that we got funding from Alpha Omega to support our security initiative. And as a result of that, we're able to hire 3 more people as part of that process. One, a full-time security engineer to help guide us through what might be the security problems in not just the project and the language, but the ecosystem as a whole. And 2 other software engineers focusing on key aspects around what we feel might have security implications, like crates.io and general security initiatives throughout the project. So we've gone from a member of 1, which is me, to now a technical team of 5 people in the last year, which is really awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I think for Steve, it would be more so poignant to ask, from the outside looking in, what sort of milestones did you see that led JFrog to want to be a part of the foundation?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. And also, I think it's something everybody here cares about, right? So why, as part of the Rust community, why do we care about the foundation? What benefits is it bringing? And why should companies like JFrog or others join the Rust Foundation? So we had the discussions with Beck really early on. And I think in a lot of those conversations, it was about, what can we do to help the Rust community to grow? And we want to be part of the growing Rust community. We want to help to add things from our company which can be of value. So we do package management of Rust crates for private repositories. We do security of Rust packages. And these are things which, as a company, we can contribute our expertise to help with by being on the board to help advise on the strategy, by supplying resources. So we actually have dedicated resources on our security research team, which work on finding vulnerabilities, working with the Rust security team to make sure that we're addressing them and disclosing them in a responsible way. And then to be giving back to the community. And I think I'm involved in a lot of different foundations and in different capacities, either as a board member or as chair. And I think also one of the things for a relatively new foundation, the Rust Foundation, it's very well run, it's very mature, like it has a clear focus on supporting the Rust project. And that's what you're looking for in a good foundation. If you can't make the project successful, if the Rust project is not thriving, then it doesn't work for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So no pressure with the growing cargo registry then, right? You've seen all the cargo crate downloads have been growing exponentially as well. So yeah, we're expecting a lot from JFrog, right? Before I move to the next question, I think I want to acknowledge Shane Miller, who is our outgoing chairperson, and our incoming chairperson, who is Lars. So that's really exciting. Hopefully they're both watching the live stream. It's great to have Lars now coming in as the new chairperson, and Shane, such great work being done to kind of hold things down as the inaugural chairperson of the Rust Foundation. Yeah, so let's give Shane a big hand.
And I was gonna add to that. Don't forget Nell, who was just elected
Yes, absolutely.
as
Yeah.
co-chair.
Yes.
That's really exciting.
Okay, great. So I think the next question can be, we're going to have our mic ready. We'll go out to the crowd in a moment, but I think it's also important that we talk about the future and what we want to see from the Rust Foundation. What expectations have been placed on the Rust Foundation in terms of scaling? Because we want to see that this is viable and this is growing. And what sort of things have you found that people are asking you for to see Rust hit the next big level? We can start with Stephen and then go around the other way.
Yeah, so I think when you look at the growth of the Rust Foundation, one of the topics which we've discussed, and I think that this is something which a lot of folks want to see in the future, is how can the Rust Foundation not only support the Rust project, but also support related projects in the ecosystem. And I think right now, the Rust Foundation is making a really wise choice to focus on the Rust project and make sure that that's successful and that gets the resources it needs. But in the future, I think there's a great opportunity for the Rust Foundation to be a larger tent, to support the ecosystem, and to make different efforts around the Rust project to also be successful and to have the same sort of great sponsorship and infrastructure and guidance which is happening for the Rust project.
Yeah, I think that's a very great point. Joel, from a technical perspective, what sort of expectations have been placed on the foundation in terms of scaling and helping things grow and be more manageable?
Yeah, it's interesting because the growth of Rust is like a double-edged sword in many ways, right? We want that to happen, and we love that it's happening, but it puts a lot of burden on the infrastructure resources that we currently have. So one of the big initiatives that we're working on is figuring out how, and I don't know if many people know this, like a lot of the infrastructure that we have is either donated or given to us by board members and in-kind resources. We want to not utilize those resources in a bad way. We want to make sure that we're using them efficiently, more cost effectively. And so one of the big initiatives that we're looking at now is how we can actually do that. How can we stop? I was talking today about this. It's like almost in between linear and exponential growth of resources that is being utilized within the project by developers, the CI that we have, a lot of the users that kind of download releases and those sorts of things. How can we actually manage that so that we're not, begging for more credits all the time and all these types of things? So I think over the next year, that's a big goal for us to make sure that we're utilizing infrastructure efficiently, wisely, but also allowing for continued growth in the ecosystem.
That's really important. I'm sure Beck has seen a lot of expectations placed on the foundation, so it'll be great to hear from your perspective as well.
I'll just whip my shopping list out of my
Right.
back pocket. Yeah, there's a huge number of things that we would like to do and that we're hearing from other people that would be useful. Obviously Joel can talk about the technical stuff. Obviously, the other thing that you didn't talk about was
Yes.
security, because that's huge. One of the things that we have to balance expectations and our priorities is actually quite a lot of the stuff that's going on in like big world outside of just our little, Rust bubble almost. As I said earlier, governments, in the last couple of years, governments have actually woken up and realized that security is a thing that needs to happen, and it needs to happen properly. You can't just buy Norton antivirus or whatever and expect security to be fixed, right? That's not how the world works anymore. So yeah, there's an awfully big kind of policy community that has no real understanding of what anyone here does. But they know there's a problem because going all the way back to Heartbleed, Log4Shell, I think, was the straw that broke the camel's back a little bit. I think people really started to think, oh my God, we really need to do something. So we've got actually quite powerful actors that are strangers to this kind of community. All of a sudden coming along and saying, right, yeah, we're going to secure open source like this, or we're going to regulate to do X. And they're very well-meaning, but I think there has been a lack of understanding. There's now OSPOs popping up in, lots of places in America and lots of different companies and in the EU now as well. That's a great start. But yeah, there's expectations coming from those people. So, one thing that we're having to do is push back on that a little bit and say, yeah, no, we totally, security, good. Yes, we want to be secure, but we need to do it in a way that doesn't place ridiculous obligations on maintainers. Yeah. We need to ensure that our communities are protected from any kind of liability. These are kind of big things that, there are expectations, but there are also things that we need to kind of educate and manage people that are outside of our little bubble. So yeah, there's a lot of expectations around Rust being a magic bullet, for instance. As I've said, there's lots of people just saying, oh yeah, just use Rust and everything will be fine. There's a bit of a confusion between memory safety and security. So yeah, we're trying to live up to the promises that we're making. We're trying to make sure that all those good things that Rust does, it can continue to do. And we're delivering on all those great promises and great features, but we're making sure that people understand that it's not a magic bullet. But, please don't overpromise on the Rust front.
Right, absolutely. Paul, it'd be great to hear more about the expectations around funding that have been placed on the foundation and how that's going to be addressed or challenged.
I think they're kind of, in terms of actually how we spend the money, I think they're, in addition to things that people already mentioned, three things. One is we desperately want to provide more support for the project. We want to be giving more funding to the people working so hard on the project because that is what creates Rust, and we know how much is done for so little in terms of recompense, and so that's something we desperately want to invest more in. The second thing is, if we can get the funding in, we're keen to see how we can develop education training materials for Rust. We know, there's fantastic things out there, but we want to understand how we can better support the creation of those materials and their dissemination. And the final thing, it touches on what Joe's been talking about in terms of infrastructure and the extent to which anything keeps me awake at night. It's not thinking about, are we going to be able to pay the bills for next year? Because, we're certain that we can pay the bills for the next year. What I worry about is that line of growth, whether it's linear or exponential, even if it's linear, it's a pretty steep line. And so even with efficiencies in terms of infrastructure, where are we going to be at in 5 years or 10 years? Because Rust is going to be here in 5 years and 10 years' time, and we're going to be looking at materially higher costs. And I think the big challenge to the foundation is starting the work now to bring in the funding so that Rust will be well supported in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and hopefully 25 years' time.
Great. That's really great to hear. I want to double back to the grants program and really hone in on that. So let's start with, what is it? What is the grants program?
Sure. So we launched the grants program in only 10 months ago. It feels like much longer. And we have two main types of grants. We have fellowships, which provide a $1,000 a month stipend for people to work on Rust and the Rust ecosystem, and there's an associated training budget and travel budget for those people to attend events like this one, and those fellowships last for a year. And we had 20 people in the initial cohort, some of whom are here today, and we're looking to replicate that program again, probably opening for applications in May of this year to start in July of this year. And then we ran 2 rounds of project grants. So these were packages of funding to do specific pieces of work or to support specific areas of work. And that's much more closely aligned to things directly supporting the Rust project, though we have had some fantastic projects in other areas of the ecosystem. And again, that's something we're looking to replicate again this year, probably with applications opening in May for grants to be starting at the start of July. And then separately from that, we have a hardship grant program. This is for people who are contributors to the Rust ecosystem, who find themselves in short-term financial rates, they can reach out to us and we will endeavour to give them some financial support to help them. And finally, we have event support grants. These are relatively small, up to $500, but they're there for people who want to run, meetups, or they want to run events, or they want to get some swag for something. We're super, super keen for people to go onto the website. They want to do that. I was speaking to someone who wants to run something in Copenhagen earlier today, and we're really, really keen to support that, to help support the grassroots Rust community all around the world.
That's really great. Thank you for the answer.
Oh, and I should say, if there are any corporations in the room, we are always happy to receive more funding for the grants program. So if you haven't already, please come down and talk to us after this, because the money that you give and put in directly into the grants program goes straight out to the grantees, and it's a fantastic way to support the Rust community.
Right, hint, right? Nice subtle hint. So, yeah, I think, but it's really important. I think doubling back onto the next question, what does each of you do on a regular basis? We'll start with Stephen, and then we'll go around from there.
Actually, I want to add something.
Yes, no, please do. Yes.
Grants quickly, and I think this is just a little context on like the larger set of foundations and communities. So what we just described for the grant program is a really, really great way of supporting the Rust project and the folks who are working on the Rust project. And if you think about what's happened just in the past few months for the software industry in terms of companies like pulling back budget and layoffs and things in the tech industry, this is exactly why we need to support open source projects and open source developers so we have a sustainable ecosystem. So I think this is a really commendable work that we should all be supporting. And long term, this is also critical because I'm in part of other foundations like CNCF, and one of the challenges is when it's no longer fashionable, when companies stop paying developers to work on open source projects, what happens? Where do you get the maintainers? Where do you get folks to manage the test suites, the CI/CD, do all the not very fun work? And this is, again, like really important role that the Rust Foundation is doing. Now, to answer the day-to-day question, again, I'm going to speak from the member of being a board member. It's a lot of reading documents, and like sometimes very legal documents about copyrights and trademarks, a lot of analysis on budgets and finances and trying to project and make good decisions on financial matters. It's all the stuff which I wish I didn't have to do in my day job, put together, but it's important work that we do for the foundation. I'm exaggerating a little bit, like we have really interesting topics about like what we should be doing. We have a bunch of members of the Rust project represented on the board who bring in a really good viewpoint. We have great discussions about where we should strategically be taking things, but also like a lot of the kind of, I think a way of putting it is the Rust Foundation and the Rust board does a lot of the not very sexy work that allows developers to have fun and code and build great stuff. So I think that the day-to-day work is hard, and it's something which needs to be done, and it enables the great development happening on the project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it's the important stuff that nobody wants to do, right? So somebody's got to do it. Yeah. Joel, it'd be great for you to expound upon what you do as well and talk a little bit about the security initiative as well as your day-to-day.
Yeah, just to preface that for a second, as a small entity, I mean, we've grown a lot over the year, but we're still only going to be about 10 people. We all have our hands in everything, right? So I help with the community grants program and review applications and see which things we want to accept. And I even get involved with like reviewing, policies and all that sort of stuff. So as a startup, anyone knows that's been in a startup,
And co-presenting with random people.
And co-presenting with random people on stage on random things, yeah. Yeah, anyone who's been in a startup knows you might have like a title, but you're actually doing everything. But I would say my day-to-day is to support the technology initiatives that both the project find important, the the members and outside entities that want to fund us find important, and determine which of those are sustainable and growable and useful, and then kind of create programs around those to hopefully satisfy satisfy everyone's ideas of what those should be. So around the security initiative specifically, we were funded by, like Paul said, Alpha Omega, AWS, to figure out, and as Beck said, Rust is seen sometimes as a panacea. It's really great, and it's like the best language out there to be secure and with all of its features, but there's things around it that can cause potential security harm, and we've seen specific examples with simple things like typo squatting and those sorts of things. So with the security initiatives particularly, we want to find out what are those high impact pain points that we can go and target and do useful things around so that when someone comes up to us that may want to use Rust in their enterprise, in the government, anywhere else, and we can say we've done everything we could to show that Rust is the most secure language, the most secure ecosystem on the planet, and you should actually consider Rust as your first choice in any development project that you're considering working on. Whether that's figuring out how we can prove that specific crates are safe, or how we can create tooling to audit code better, and those sorts of things. These are the kinds of things we want to figure out over the next 6 to 12 months and present to the project and the community and show that we're actually focusing on the right things around that. So.
That's great. That's great. And Beck, I'm sure you wear loads of different hats. It'd be great to know what those hats are.
I don't think I can list them all, but no, it's a great job, and it's great working for an organization like this because I love building things. I love that kind of positivity and bringing different new people in to kind of get a plurality of voices and create something that's bigger and better and stronger than it was before. So yeah, my typical day, I don't think I have much of a typical day.
Stand up at 10 a.m.
We have, in the UK, we have stand-up at 10 a.m. and then we have another stand-up at like 5:30 sometimes because we cross the globe. But we also, I will be having calls with potential sponsors or potential members. I'll be having calls with people that work in and around the ecosystem, either just catching up to see what's going on, but also specifically saying, okay, there's potential for us to do an initiative over here. Can you help? Can you leverage resources? An awful lot of my time is spent asking people for money because, money makes the world go round. And, I want people to write us huge checks. So, as Paul said, we can spend it on making the Rust ecosystem a good, strong, safe, sustainable place for everyone. And, I'm thinking about years in the future as well. It's not just, okay, what do I need? What fire do I need to put out today? It's what's going to catch fire in 3 years' time and could sink us. So it's really kind of trying to strategize as well about, okay, how do we make sure that we're well established and that we are well funded, and that we kind of minimize all of the risks as an organization, both to us and to the project and the ecosystem. So that might just be kind of bouncing ideas off people, coming to conferences like this and meeting other people who have different interests. And yeah, I could be talking to government people one day, people in the project 2 hours later, and then at an event with completely random people who all of a sudden say, oh my God, I love Rust. Yeah, well, my company has some money. So yeah, it's very, very varied. There are a lot of spreadsheets. I speak to lawyers more than I'd like. Yeah,
Sorry. Sorry to hear that.
no one told me quite how much time I'd have to spend talking to lawyers. But, that's what we're here for. We're here to talk to the lawyers. We're here to look at the spreadsheets so that other people don't have to and that they can do what they really love and they're really good at. So it's a great job, and I'm truly fortunate to be here.
Amazing. And last but not least, Paul?
Yeah, I think Joe makes a really good point. It has a very startup-y feel in that I wouldn't say that we interfere with everything that everybody else does, but just because we're a small team, it's really important for us to know what everyone else is doing and to talk about it and to share. So there's a certain amount of time that's just me learning about things I honestly don't understand from a technical perspective, but helps inform my understanding of how my colleagues are working and how they're feeling. There's obviously finance, quite a lot of spreadsheety stuff, lots of fun things like 990 submissions and 1024 submissions to the IRS, which I kind of find nerdly interesting. The grants program is it's a bit peaks and troughs. When we have the window open, we're getting the applications in, and there's a vast amount of time spent on that, and then following up with the grantees when we make the awards, and recently arranging training for them. Going on calls with Beck with lawyers sometimes, attending events with Beck, and even in the case of midnight last night, ironing the tablecloth for a stand that's, in the room downstairs, yeah.
And setting the karaoke playlist.
Yes.
Well, that's great. That's great. So I think we'll take some questions from the audience now. Please keep your questions salient and respectful. Otherwise, you'll have your plushie taken away from you, all right? So
We haven't had our plushes yet.
So, thank you, Giles.
Hello. One of the favorite things for me about Rust is how efficient it is, and the idea of the use cases, putting it into platforms, really reshaping managed services for some of the world's biggest companies can save them millions and millions of pounds. What more can we do to really say, if that's the benefit you get, kind of bring that into the foundation and hold them to account in some ways like that?
Do you want me to jump in?
Want to take that?
I can make some opening comments on that if you
Go for
like.
it.
So I think the point you're raising is actually part of a broader issue that is something we've been talking about a lot, and we've also been talking about to our members, which is not just true of Rust, but it's true of all of open source, which is there's a load of companies that rate their revenue in millions or billions of dollars that fundamentally depend on open source, primarily supported by volunteers, and they don't put anything like as much money back into the ecosystem that has generated such vast revenue and such vast profits for them. I think the specific case in point with Rust is even more true because you can see actually demonstrable savings in terms of energy usage and hence spending. And I think the answer is that we need to be better evangelists as a foundation team. We need to spend more time on it. We need to find a nice way of guilt-tripping some of these organizations into supporting not just Rust, but all kinds of open source. But I also think that actually the members who have very generously already stepped up and started to support us can be potentially our best advocates because they can speak to these organizations much more like peers, and hopefully they will be hugely instrumental in supporting us in getting those messages across.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say funding open source is an open source problem. It's not just exclusive to the Rust community. I think we shouldn't just be talking about corporations. Open source software is in government as well. And I actually think, I was, for the people here in the UK, I was actually down in Whitehall yesterday speaking to the UK government who have got a consultation out on how they can support the supply chain software. And they're not, they're not thinking that far ahead at the moment. They're not thinking that creatively. And one of the first things I said to this person from DCMS was, well, what are you doing as the government to set an example? Obviously, yes, lots of companies are benefiting from OSS, and we definitely need them to be contributing. But you should actually be leading the way. You should actually say, okay, well, this is how we're gonna support open source security. This is how we're gonna make sure that maintainer communities aren't unfairly burdened, certainly by any additional kind of security requirements that we want to implement. And there wasn't really an answer to that. But I'm hoping that if we keep asking that question, that there will be an answer, because I know certainly there are people that want to do this. I think there's a lack of imagination as to how to tackle this. I don't think until recently there's been a big, and coherent will to do it. I feel like it's far more on the agenda now, though. I feel like because security is such an issue now, people are thinking, okay, we need to be more serious about this. We need to be more coherent. And I think there's a far greater understanding. And like a lot of the big tech organizations have helped with this. There is a far greater understanding that maintainer compensation and well-being is absolutely vital in terms of having a healthy and secure ecosystem. So we know that this is there. Getting people to then contribute, I think we maybe as a foundation should be working with other foundations to maybe innovate a little bit in terms of saying, this is the calculation. This is how you figure out how much you should be paying open source foundations or whatever, so that they can continue to support the ecosystem that you are financially benefiting off. I think there is a way. It's not going to happen tomorrow, and it requires an awful lot of people to act in good faith. But I think we're actually closer to moving forward on it than we have been ever before.
Great.
Yeah. So I look at it, I think, from a similar perspective. I want to see the foundation and the project be exemplar models of how to run a foundation and a project. But the members that donate their money and their in-kind resources, it's very generous, and I don't poo-poo any of that at all. But they also have a stake in the game now, right? So given those donations, they are now involved in how things are managed, how things are run. They get to see from the inside what things are going on. And as they do that, I think I'm hoping they find more, some of these other companies find more empathy in how hard it is to actually run an open source project and how hard it is to manage an open source ecosystem, and the difficulties that some people go through, and trying to do good for a lot of people. Rust affects a lot of people around the world. And if we can be an example for that and continue to get these companies to continue to believe in us and do the work that we are doing, I think it'll help not just the foundation and the project, but also I believe in open source as a whole. So the same companies will then start funding other open source projects, which will then beget funding for more open source projects. And I guess this is some sort of pie in the sky dream, but like in the end, all these players decide that, yeah, open source is why we are who we are today and why we are able to make the products and make the money we are making right now. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, probably the best way for me to describe, I think, like why companies support open source is to talk about why JFrog supports open source and has joined the Rust Foundation. And I think it's a little more grounded. So I personally, I've been an open source developer my whole career. I love open source, and I contribute a lot of my personal time. But doing good for the community is not a great argument for my CEO. Now, that's
I've been there.
Now, that said, there is real business value, I think, for if you look hard at what our companies do, at kind of what the investments we all have in the Rust language and the Rust ecosystem. In our case, the decision was around like what we're doing for Rust security. So we have a strong focus on securing packages across all languages and ecosystems. We have big investments in Rust security with a dedicated research team. And it makes a lot of sense for us to support the foundation to advance that security work in a publicly visible way to kind of show that we care about and we engage the community. And there's a leap of faith on the business side that when you do good work for the community, when you help the ecosystem, then people are going to appreciate that, and then it turns into future business value. And I think that like those sort of arguments are the best way of convincing your boss to fund the foundation. It's, hey, we're doing this work. This work would be so much better or more amplified or more impactful if we donate to or we support a foundation. And then, a couple of years from now, it'll make our company grow and achieve better things. And I think that companies which have made these investments in the past in open source have benefited, and you can name a lot of big companies which they built their reputation and their brand on supporting open source, and they've been very successful. But more companies need to kind of find that niche where there's value for the open source ecosystem and value for the company, and then like continue to support open source foundations like the Rust Foundation.
And it's a compounding effect. Because in the past, the big kind of benefit was speed with Rust. But now we're talking about different benefits that you get from Rust, which reinforce business cases and make the case easier to be involved in the ecosystem and support open source in a real way. So I think it's starting to be a no-brainer at some point where you just want to just to help as well. So that's really great to hear. Any more questions? Next question? Great. Oh, okay. Nixon, we'll come after you next.
Hello. Yeah, I wanted to ask about community moderation. Now, I know that that's something the Rust project, I think, wants to keep control of the governance of, but it's always something that's very hard work, and I wonder if there's anything that the foundation could do. You know, do you think that the community moderation is well enough supported in the project, and is there anything that you would be able to do to help out the moderators?
Should I take that one to start? So in the most recent round of project grants, we did make grant awards to both members of the moderation team, because you're absolutely right, the moderation team definitely needs more support. We've also been funding some contractor support for the moderation team as well, and we're looking at how we can turn that into a longer term, more formal piece of funding support for the moderation team. But to the point that you made at the start, absolutely, that doesn't mean that the Rust Foundation wants to control moderation, have any influence over the decision. The moderation team will absolutely have autonomy. We just want to make sure that they are well supported, but also that we can offer them any legal support and protection as well, because as you know, it's a potentially risky area to be working in for people who are volunteers.
Nixon.
So, yeah, you're obviously not the first software foundation. There's been like the Python Software Foundation, Linux Foundation, CNCF. What inspiration in like your organization have you taken from the foundations that have come before you, and where have you decided to do something different and new?
Great question.
That is a good question. So I think it was really important for us, we're very young. I think it was important not to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but not just take something off the shelf just because it was easy. I think the Rust Foundation has a really, good split between having project director representation on our governing board as well as platinum member representation. Because that means the community voice, the project voice, is always very strong, it's always heard, and it's heard at the highest level where a lot of the decisions are made, certainly about finances and about priorities. And any kind of really big decisions that materially affect the direction of the foundation or what we decide to do, those will require a super majority vote. So, even if all of our corporate directors voted one way, if our project directors representing the Rust project voted a different way, the platinum members couldn't force it through regardless of how much money they donated. So I feel like we're in this kind of really good, strong position where there's a balance, and I'd like to, obviously you don't come to our board meetings, but I'd like to emphasize just how kind of civilized, rational, consensus building those meetings are. We actually don't have to have votes very often because it never really gets to the point where there are massive disagreements. We work in a very kind of collaborative way. But yeah, that is a different model to other foundations. Obviously as well, with other foundations you might have the governing board and then a technical advisory committee, and everything is kind of rolled into one. Whereas with the Rust Foundation, it was considered very, very important early on when the foundation was being developed to keep the Rust project kind of separate, not completely under the thumb of the foundation. So, we are kind of separate entities. The foundation is the legal entity, but we have, we cannot and we will not dictate to the project. They are free to choose their own models of governance and ways of working and priorities for the language and the roadmaps. I feel that's a good balance now. And it is slightly different from other foundations, but not a million miles away. We've still borrowed, from other foundations is, okay, well, they do this way. Oh, that's interesting. Their trademark policy says X. I don't think we should go that way. But it's interesting to see. So yeah, there's lots of lessons that we've learned, and we have cherry-picked things from elsewhere. But I think at the moment we're in a good position, and we're going the right way. Hopefully, we will still be going in that positive direction in the years to come.
Great. Steve, what DNA of other foundations that you may have been a part of before have you seen in the Rust Foundation since you've joined?
Yeah, no, I mean, I mentioned that I think the Rust Foundation's really well run. I think Beck highlighted a lot of the differences, right? So having all the project members having more representation, and I think one of their big difference is the level of discussion at the board meetings is a lot more like deep and technical than other boards which I'm involved in. So the board meetings are 2 hours. Usually that's not enough time for us to complete the full agenda. And even though Beck said that we're mostly in agreement, it requires a lot of discussion and consensus building, even in those meetings, for us to all feel comfortable with the decisions. So I don't think anybody takes lightly like the sort of decisions which we're making, which impact the foundation and also the project. And we all have experience working for other foundations. Like I'm involved in a bunch of the Linux Foundation projects. Some other folks have come from like Apache or Eclipse or other foundations as well. And I think that the kind of the tools, the processes, the ways of governing, there's a lot of best practices to make sure that it's done fairly. I think that the election process that we did this year for choosing the new chair was also done like with a proper formal process and using a voting tool which allowed for like getting rid of contested elections. Like it's all stuff which, as the foundation matures, then it gives that extra level of reliability so that we're following and adhering to things which can be verified and are good best practices.
Did you want to add anything? Yes.
No, I mean, I was going to say my jokey answer would be my biggest inspiration from the Linux Foundation is its $100 million a year turnover.
Right. Well,
But
we'd all love that, right?
But in all seriousness, no, the fact that they have over 1,000 members, now clearly Linux has been around a long time, it is widely used. But I think that is aspirational for us in terms of we've got 30 or so members at the moment. We know that Rust is used far more widely. We know new organizations are starting to use it every single day. That should help inform our ambition in terms of how we can grow the membership, hence how we can grow the funding, hence how can we then further support the project.
Yeah, we're coming to find you, all right? We'll take one more question from the audience, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Hey, if you go through the popular crates, there are some that are single owner crates, and this isn't very sustainable or good for code of conduct or security or bus factor. So I wondered, is there any merit in having like a Rust Foundation org and then being able to adopt those crates under the foundation or something, as you sometimes see with like the GNOME or KDE, they tend to have their packages under their own control.
I think that's one for
What do
Joel.
you think, Director of Technology?
We'll let Joel take that.
Yeah. So I think we talked about a little bit over the course of the AMA about figuring out a way how we can expand and grow.
Yeah, you might.
Turn the mic up, please. It's not working?
Sure. And help.
I think we've talked about over the course of the AMA how the foundation can work to maybe expand and grow its reach, not just from within the Rust project, but into the ecosystem that the Rust project kind of depends on many ways. And one of those ways is to figure out whether it would be good to have the foundation support popular crates. Like you said, single owner crates. But there has to be a way to determine, and we haven't come up with the full process yet, what the criteria would be for those crates that would fall under that umbrella. I mean, there's obviously some single owner crates that may not be as used or as valuable, or maybe some potentially trying to be semi-malicious, you never know, but we had to have some sort of criteria to determine which of those crates we would want the foundation support, since there's, what, over, you know,
105,000 crates.
yeah,
A lot of crates.
yeah, a lot of them. So I don't think we could support every single owner crate, but it's something on my mind to figure out how we can figure out to determine which of those that we can support.
All right. Last question. How can my organization become a Rust Foundation member? And we'll start with Beck, and then we'll go to Paul.
Probably say the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's only one way. You just get in touch. You know, DM, Mastodon, Discord, Zulip.
Or just email us using the email address on the website.
We have a postal address, believe it or not.
Don't use the postal address.
It would never occur to us that anyone would send us anything in the post. But yeah, contact us anyway. It's really easy. There's a deck, membership deck on the website. It's pretty easy to sign up. If you say we would love to join, we will say, right, okay, which level. We'll send you a DocuSign.
Or if you'd like a further conversation, just to chat about it, to learn more, then just drop us an
We'd
email.
love to have a chat. And yeah, away we go. We really do not want to make it difficult at all for people to come join the foundation and help support everything.
Yeah, I can say from experience, the process is very easy.
And the membership deck has been updated.
It has.
Yeah, and it's live on the site with a great analogy about orchestras and venues, and to figure out, yeah, you should take a read.
So yeah, we think it's really simple. If you want to bring lawyers, that's going to make things, that's going to take longer.
But we
we'll
will
still get
we
there.
will still welcome your lawyers and work through the process.
And there are non-membership donations that come through as well. So if we can just mention that process a little bit as well. So you may not necessarily want to be a member, but you still want to contribute. How can you do that?
Just simply get in touch with us from the address via the website. A number of organisations and individuals have made specific donations to support the grants programme, and that's money that's ring-fenced to be directly spent on grants to people. So we will welcome donations of any size directly into the grants programme to support that.
Great. So you've heard it here. Make a donation. Make a donation if you want. Thank you all very much. Please give them a massive hand. Please still feel free to have a chat with them at their stand. Also, Beck is going to be at the post-conference brunch tomorrow as well, where we're going to really hone in on Rust in Enterprise. We're going to have a chat with a very special guest who will be also having a fireside chat with me tomorrow as well. I'm not going to say who, but it's great to have you folks here. It's really showing the growth of the language. It's really showing how Rust is becoming more grown up now. So it's great to have you folks doing the slog work, doing the boring stuff. So give them a big hand again, please.